Hello guys and welcome to my next video. Again, it's all about Star Wars Shatterpoint. As may some of you have seen on my social medias, I had run a voting which miniatures I should paint next, and the choice was between Obi-Wan and Count Dooku. And yes, honestly, it was very close. So actually, I would prefer Dooku. And yeah, as I said, it was very close. I had voting running on YouTube and also on Instagram. And yeah, on Instagram, Obi-Wan won, and on YouTube, I think Dooku won. So yeah, it was very close in both cases. And so I decided, of course, to paint both of them. So yeah, in this tutorial I'm painting Kenobi. Stay tuned, watch until the end, because in the end of the video I have something special for you. Enjoy the tutorial, have fun, I hope you like it. Let's jump into it. I'm starting with priming, and as usual I'm using a black from Vallejo, a black primer, with the airbrush and spraying all surfaces with it. After this step I'm using cold gray, game air color from Vallejo, and spraying mostly from above onto the miniature. But in this case I also spray from the bottom of the miniature to get all armor gray, in the light gray tone, because at the end I want to have the armor white, and therefore the shadows would be too dark if I don't spray it also from the bottom. Otherwise the gray would be too dark, or I already would have some black underneath the armor, and that would be too dark for a white armor. Next I'm using off-white game color from Vallejo and thin it down with thinner in the airbrush and spray again on top of the armor to really get the white I want to achieve at the end. I also spray a little bit onto the face and from the direction where the light comes from the lightsaber for the OSL afterwards. Now let's jump to the painting desk, where I start with the face as usual. I'm using brown rosé from Model Color Vallejo for this. This is actually my main color for painting faces. Sometimes I mix it with other colors to get another skin tone, but this time it is a gaming miniature and therefore I just use it pure to get my base color for the face. I really love to start with the face because this really gets me into the character and brings the miniature more to life. If you have finished the face, it really connects you to the character and to the miniature a lot, and that makes it much easier to paint the rest of the miniature, and of course then it's also more fun. My color is quite thin, and therefore to really cover the whole face I need more than one layer, often 2 or 3, to really cover it. For the shadows in the face I'm using chocolate brown from Model Color Vallejo. Because it's a normal color I use a lot of water to really thin it down to a wash, and then I'm just going through the whole face to get the recesses quite brown dark, and where I don't want to have too much of the color I just wipe off the color, for example from the cheeks, the forehead and the nose. As you can see, I'm now going back with some brown rosé and just pick the upper parts like the nose, the forehead, the cheeks and all parts of the face which stand out. So this is a part where I really be careful about what I do and where I pick my spots to get my highlights at the end, and you can see the transition is not that good at this point. They are really sharp and not that smooth, but I will improve this later on, so this stage is really just to place the highlights where they have to be. My main highlights are on the forehead, the nose, the cheeks and the ears, and with the skin not on the chin as usual because he has a beard, and I will highlight the beard with the hair tone later on. I'm always trying to get my brush strokes from the midtones or the shadows to the highlights, so to the brightest lights I want to have, and not the other direction, so that the color builds up in the right place. To bring the shadows and the first highlights a little bit better together, I'm using chocolate brown again, and this time as a glaze, and I'm just trying to get a better transition. I now have mixed some ivory into my brown rosé base tone to get it a little bit brighter, and then I go again over the upper parts of the face. Like before, I'm picking the main spots of the face where I want to have my highlights at the end. As you can see, I'm pushing around the color a little bit onto the places I want to have it until I'm happy with the look and the brightness. And for the final highlights on the face, I'm using some pure ivory and just put it onto the highlights where I want to have the brightest points of light. Next, I'm using some black model color from Vallejo and just painting around the hair edges and the beard edges, just to get already something like a black lining after I put the real hair color on. This really helps to let the face pop out in the end, and of course it gets more contrast and depth. I'm moving on now with brown leather from scale 75 to set the base tone for the hair. I'm using the pure color especially for the top parts of the hair and the beard, and for some bottom parts I'm mixing the color a little bit with some black to get already some smooth transitions. So actually I'm doing some kind of wet blending here. This really helps to get the hair look more natural and the transitions gets much better. Yeah, another thing you can see here, I already have painted the eyes. Sorry, but I couldn't really get this quite good on camera, and therefore I had to paint it off cam. Sorry about this, but it's just too small to really show it. To set some highlights for the hair, I'm using orange leather from scale 75, and now I'm just brushing slightly through the top of the head so that I only hit the upper parts from the hair. I'm doing the same thing with the beard and especially for the parts up on the lip and under the cheeks. Now I'm using some black again and paint all underneath clothes which I want to have black in the end. And I'm starting with this part because it always makes sense if you start with the parts on the body or the clothes which are further down, because then you don't mess up at the end the upper parts of the armor or the clothes. But anyway, it makes quite sense to be careful here because it's very hard to paint the white again over or any color which has a lot of white parts onto black. I'm moving on with the robe and I'm using Iraqi sand and chocolate brown from Model Color Vallejo in a 50-50 mix, and I'm just painting all over the whole robe. You can see I have some small crumbs or something, small dirt points, I don't know, on the robe. I don't know what happened here on my wet palette, but I will remove them later on or try to remove them. I never had something like this before and I still don't know what happened here, and I couldn't find anything on my wet palette, so I have no idea where those come from. But yeah, no, don't worry, I removed them later. You can see now I'm already started with putting some more ivory in the mixture, so something about a 70 or 80-20 mixture, and just go over the wrinkles from the robe, the top of the wrinkles, to highlight the robe and the upper parts. Then the interim looks like this, so you can see the wrinkles are on top quite bright already, and in the deepenings we have still the brown base color. So the last layer was pure Iraqi sand, and therefore I'm now moving on with mixing some ivory into the Iraqi sand to get the highlights even more brighter. The process is quite similar, I just don't paint broad strokes anymore, so more thinner lines to get a little bit of a transition from the midtones to the highlights. And because there are some more white parts now in the mixture, the color doesn't cover that good anymore, and I have to paint some more layers. You can also see that the depth parts of the robe are not that brown dark anymore, because I also painted some slight layers, soft layers onto them to get a better transition from the shadows to the midtones and the highlights. For the last layer I went up almost with pure ivory. I'm painting the armor with some game color of white from Vallejo, and I'm first picking out all the edges and all the upper parts of the armor and paint them to get an idea where I want to push my highlights, and I want to have my final highlights and the brightest parts of the armor. Before I move on with the left shoulder pad, I'm using some Sanctuary red and some black red in a 50-50 mixture to paint the Jedi symbol. My color is very thin here to really get it into the indentations and let the color flow into it almost. I hit some spots which should be red, and that's not an issue. I just went back and used some off-white again to paint the edges of the symbol and to get it white again. You may have to put some more layers to really cover the red which is underneath. I'm now going over with some white from Vallejo Model Color. So this is really a pure white color, and I'm picking out all the final spot highlights which should be the brightest on the armor, which means all the edges and all parts which are hidden most by the light. You can see here on the foot armor I now really get a nice look between the shadows, the midtones and the highlights, because I left some base tone, a small part, and therefore I get a nice contrast also on the white armor. Next, I'm going to paint or highlight the black cloth parts with some gray pale and some black mixture from Vallejo Game Color. So it's about a 50-50 mixture, and I'm just going over all black parts of the clothes and also the hand clothes, and just pick out the upper parts here. This step is not really necessary, but of course it gives it a nicer and better look and more structure onto the clothes. I am then also doing some highlights here, and the mixture now has just more of the cold gray in it, therefore it's much brighter, and I'm just going over all parts I painted before and pick out again some highlight spots. I'm painting the whole belt black to get some black lining already. And I'm using for the base color brown leather from scale 75. I'm using some Blake Brown from Vallejo Game Color and mix it into the brown leather to set the highlights on the belt. I'm also highlighting the little bags which are on the belt on the left and the right hand side. And for the final highlights I'm using some ivory into the mixture to get the color a bit brighter, and again I'm picking the upper spots to set the final highlights. Now let's jump to the non-metallic metal parts. I'm using blue gray from Vallejo again and just painting all over the metal surface, in this case the handle of the lightsaber, and putting the color onto every upper part and all the edges on. I'm mixing the gray tone with some ivory to get the gray brighter, and again go over all the parts I already have painted gray, but don't paint over the whole gray surfaces, so just the parts I want to get very bright in the end. It is very important to keep the midtones and especially the shadows to get the non-metallic metal effect. To let the metallic look more natural and more cold, I'm using some blue air color from Vallejo. The air color is very good because it's very thin already, and therefore it's perfect to make a glaze for this purpose. Actually, I'm trying to get the tone especially in the midtones, but the handle is so tiny that I just go over it and I bring back the highlights with using some pure ivory to get the brightness back again. For the final and the brightest highlights, I'm using some pure white and picking just really small spots on the handle to make it really shiny, and you will see this really makes a big difference to get the non-metallic metal very shiny. Of course, it's possible to get this a lot better, but I guess for a gaming miniature it really looks great and will stand out on the gaming table. Now I get to a very important point, the lightsaber, and I'm starting with just base coloring it white to make sure that the white really covers the lightsaber. For the blue light of the saber, I'm using the blue air color from Vallejo again and just glazing over the whole saber. I'm trying to don't put too much color at one place and just pushing around the color that it don't seems that there is one blob of blue at one point and I get a good transition. Then I'm going back and blocking in some white at some spaces, so I'm trying to achieve some thin lines onto the saber to get a little bit of variance between the colors and that it looks like there are some more bright parts in the saber. I'm really going back and forth there with the white and then the blue glaze again, so that I get a really nice look at the end. For the objective source lighting, I'm also using the same blue glaze and just painting all the surfaces, especially on the armor and the face, which are hidden by the light of the lightsaber. Like with the lightsaber, I'm trying to put on some very thin coats and better more coats than 1-2 thick coats. And you can see I'm trying to fading out the blue from the parts where the light hit the most to make it more smooth, and painting more paint on the parts where the light hitting the strongest. This miniature makes it very easy to see because the lightsaber has a clear line to the front beside the head, and you can see that with the angle of the lightsaber where the light ends on the armor and on the arm, and it just really hits the left side of the face. On the face I did the same like with the armor and very thin coats to just achieve a really smooth and slight OSL. Yes, and I'm done. Here he is, Obi-Wan Kenobi, fighting for the Republic. I'm very happy with the result, especially for a gaming miniature. I think he looks very good, and yes, I'm also happy about the OSL turned out. I just wanted it not too bright, not too strong like I did it on Anakin already. Maybe you have seen him. If you want me to make a tutorial about the painting of the bases from Star Wars Shatterpoint, let me know in the comments below. And if you want to see some more photos from Kenobi, feel free to check out my social medias. You can find the links in my description. Cheers! I hope you liked the tutorial and I hope it will help you to paint your minis. Now let's get to the very interesting point I told you at the beginning of the video. You get the chance to get my painted completely box from Hello There Squad Pack Obi-Wan, because obviously you guys like Obi-Wan or this miniature pack and Obi-Wan as a miniature in this case from Shatterpoint a lot. So I decided, because I have not the chance to play Shatterpoint unfortunately, because yeah, I have a lot to do with painting and anyway I have not that much time unfortunately to play tabletop games, and therefore I will sell this completely pack to you, or actually make an auction. You have the chance, now the video is online, to send me an email. You can find my email address in the description below. Just send me your offer. You have time to send me your offer until the 12th of June, and the auction starts from 150 euros. So all offers less than this amount are not included. And of course you also get all of the cards which are necessary to play with the miniatures. And the highest offer will get the whole painted minis. With this you're getting very great painted miniatures for the game, for your next tabletop game. And you also support me with my art, and especially you support me to do more of those videos. So thanks a lot already to everyone who participates here, and I hope they will see a lot of gaming tables and be successful in battle. Thanks a lot, guys. As I said, if you want to see the clone troopers in a tutorial as well, I filmed everything. I just have to do the editing stuff. So if you want to see it, let me know, please. And yeah, thanks for watching. Have a good one. Cheers, Jonathan from Wavecolors.